Hey guys, it's Christy from Christy Lewis Reviews Books Worth Your Time. I'm here with the second part of my September wrap-up. September wrap-up part 2. Two of the books that I read are for a secret TBR video, which I should be releasing at least the first half of it this month. So anyway, let's get started. The first one that I wanted to tell you guys about is Redeployment by Klay. Now, look at all of these notes. Obviously, I enjoyed it. I have a lot to say about this one. I'm gonna have to save most of it for a more extended book review. This is a collection of short stories by a Marine veteran, Klay, and they're really fantastic. It won the National Book Award in 2014. This was a book that my book club picked. It is now my favorite book of the war writing traditions. It's all about Marines in the Iraq War. There was just a multitude of takes on it. It's a very American perspective. It doesn't give perspective of anybody from the other side. It's all very much an American Marines perspective. What it probably does most is it shows how broken war can make the human spirit, whether or not you can overcome it. These are mostly focused on veterans who were in combat or saw combat, killed somebody, and were dealing with that fact. The ones who did not see combat were often in bureaucratic positions, and those were really interesting because we got to see more of an admin perspective of the war, which I really enjoyed. Some were off deployment, some were still actively deployed, and the combat ones were often really really and intense. They were all so moving. I can't wait to talk more about them. And before I really film that video, I really want to get further in the occupation of Iraq, winning the war and losing the peace. This is something that I got. It's by Allawi, he's a Iraqi citizen. He really has some unique things to say about the war. The next book is The Little Prince by, I can't pronounce his name, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry? Exupéry? I don't know. Something like that. The Little Prince is a philosophical fable that explores the meaning of life, and it does it in just a really adorable way with illustrations from the author. I really enjoyed this. It was another one of my bedtime reading books. It is one of the most translated books in the world. So the narrator of the story is actually not the Little Prince. It's somebody who meets the Little Prince when they are in the desert together. He finds the Little Prince. We realize quickly that he is from an asteroid. The author illustrates the prince's journey through space as he learns about it from the Little Prince's narration. And the Little Prince meets all kinds of rulers and just really hapless people who are just going about doing things that don't make sense. If you're a kid looking at it and they explain it to you, you see the absurdity of what they're doing, and it's really quite clever. And he criticizes adults for always being busy with matters of consequence. Because they're not consequential at all. And there's all kinds of little charming things that the author kind of throws in here for children about philosophy and a ton of other stuff. Friendship, how to treat girls, which, I don't know, the way he is supposed to treat girls is illustrated by how he treats a flower. It actually probably makes sense for teenage girls. It's a little insulting for a woman, but if you're dealing with young teenage girls, which the prince is, the advice makes sense. Throughout this book, the narrator complains a lot about adults, and I think it's from what he learns from the prince that what adults often value in this world is not what's important. He gets so irritated with adults who can't understand what his illustrations mean. So this is one of his illustrations that he drew when he was a kid. What do you see when you look at this? The adults see a hat, and obviously it's supposed to be an elephant inside of a boa constrictor. A boa constrictor swallowed an elephant. That's what it's supposed to be, but none of the adults understand that. Why can't you understand that? He doesn't like how adults are so obsessed with figures and numbers and business and trying to own things when it won't make them happy and it doesn't make sense and it's not a good thing for the thing that's being owned. How they try to classify people by their numbers, socioeconomic numbers and rank and stuff like that. And I laughed out loud a couple times when reading this. I wish I could read it in French. My favorite thing about it is how much it values both responsibility. The prince has all kinds of advice for us about how to take care of your asteroid, and also imagination. When I was a little boy, I lived in an old house, and legend told us that a treasure was buried there. To be sure, no one had ever known how to find it. Perhaps no one had even ever looked for it, but it cast an enchantment over that house. My home was hiding a secret in the depths of its heart. It's like imagination and mythology and stories and history are kind of what make places fun. Forests are fun if you can imagine all the fairies in the forest and, you know, stuff like that. His house was fun because they imagined there was a treasure there. It like baptizes your imagination to see things in a more fun way if you can develop that kind of imagination. It kind of gets you like kind of longing for something intangible and invisible that can't really be satisfied. I like that in books because, I mean, that's why I read science fiction and fantasy, because it kind of reminds me of heaven. I think that's why I read science fiction and fantasy, and that's probably why I will always read them, is because I just don't know where else to find that feeling in books. No other genre really gives me that feeling of a longing for a place that I don't have and wish I was there. I think that's the strongest reason why I believe in heaven, is because we have desires for things that are intangible that we can't have. Most of our longings we can satisfy, you know, sex and food and stuff like that. This idea came from a quote that I just heard on the channel Raised to Walk, which I will link down in the comments for you guys. It's like a C.S. Lewis quote. And next I want to talk about The Falconer by Elizabeth May, which is a young adult steampunk fantasy with fairy elements. I was reading this one because the name of the book club, which is a booktube club that one of my favorite booktubers is a part of, Kaz, the little book owl. I thought I'd read this pick with them. Sadly, I didn't actually finish it. I got about 3/4 of the way through. It's about an 18-year-old girl named Lady Eliana who can sense the kind of fae that like to wander around slaughtering humans. She can actually sense them, and so she tracks them and kills them before they can kill more human prey. And this is all stemming from one who murdered her mother. She is also a debutante. Unfortunately, that means she has to hide what she does, which causes all sorts of bad rumors about her reputation, of course. I really loved the world building. It's set in Scotland at a time when it's not really respectable to be using Scottish terms. And I really loved the variety and the descriptions of the fae. The action scenes were also really good. I usually skip action scenes, to be honest, but they were interesting for me to follow. It also had like really promising plot developments for the series. Even though I didn't finish this, that was mostly because of the romance arc. I am not bashing this book at all. I really loved to read romance. And then I got married and marriage is better. I was really hoping that I would be able to just power through, but I just kind of was like, well, there's other things I would probably rather be reading. Even though if you like young adult fantasy, I'm sure you'll like this. I really enjoyed pretty much everything about it except the romance. Recommended if you like that kind of thing. And the other story that I really wanted to talk about was Batman. I've been watching Batman for my relaxation time because my husband loves these and bought them quite a while ago. He loved them and he kept singing their praises, and I just was like, I am not interested, even though I love the Batmans with Christian Bale. It's an urban fantasy that appeals to kids and adults, and most of the world building energy goes into the villains, who all have like really interesting backstories and moral dilemmas. This is season 2. I already watched season 1. Holy cow, the Scarecrow is freaky. I'm just really surprised and pleased with the quality. I've also been listening to Story by Robert McKee. This is about screenwriting. I listen to the audiobook on my phone when I walk and I take notes. I actually have been like reading and rereading and working through the exercises in John Truby's The Anatomy of Story for years, and I feel like I understand story a lot better, but it also really slows me down because he's just so thorough. It's like front loading all of your thinking. It's like you do your revision before you've even written the first draft kind of a process. So that really slows me down, but I feel like I'm also learning a lot, so I don't know if it's slowing me down as much as teaching me everything. It's just taking a while to write using this method, so I'm checking out other methods as well. Robert McKee's Story is also supposed to be really helpful for learning about style and the principles of screenwriting. Both of those books are screenwriting books, but they're the best books on structure that I've ever read for writing so far. I haven't read like all of the books or anything, but also like watching the movie Pulp Fiction as my first Quentin Tarantino, and I'm not really enjoying it. I don't really get it. It is unexpected. Everything in it so far is really unexpected, but I think it's like that quality of humor that I just don't get very well. I sometimes that happens with modern humor where it's like supposed to be funny and I'm like, was that funny? Oh, but I missed it. What was funny? I also watched season 3 of Victoria So good. And I'm ordering the book from the library, which who knows when I'll get to read that. I have no idea, but I'm ordering it to like keep it in front of my face so that maybe I'll get to it sooner. So, how did I do with last month's TBR? Well, I think there was 4 things on it, and I only read one of them all the way through, which is Redeployment by Phil Klay. And then the biography of Alexander Hamilton was one of them, and I did make some progress on that audiobook before I got distracted by a different audiobook. For my writing, I'm listening to Madame Bovary. I will get back to the Hamilton biography. I was really enjoying learning about his life. Our Hamilton trip has been put on hold. My finishing the biography probably depends on whether or not we're gonna go see Hamilton. Regardless, there are some other books that were on there that I really want to read as well, and those are like higher priority. I really want to read The Consolation of Philosophy, which I talked about in my last video. The other book that I have that I also didn't make any progress in at all is Mystery and Manners by Flannery O'Connor. That is really all now for September. I'll be talking to you guys soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much for watching. What did you enjoy in September? Have you read any of those or watched any of those? Do you have any other suggestions for TV shows that are kind of like Batman that maybe would be good for relaxing and falling asleep to? Kind of like Avatar, maybe? Please like and comment and subscribe. And I hope that I'll hear from you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye. Hey, that's better. Ah, now you can sort of see it. There we go. Okay, we're keeping it there. This is gonna be like 1,000 years long.